Hi, welcome to this MySportsAI video. This is just a quick video to try and clear up some misunderstandings about the difference between TrainTest Split and k-fold cross-validation. Okay, I've just got a little spreadsheet up here with some dummy data in, just a small sample of 10 rows of data, which I've simply made up. We've got an age field. This could typically be a set of inputs to a model. We've got an age column, days since last run, trainer strike rate, jockey strike rate, and then over here we've got whether the horse won or lost. Obviously a 1 meaning the horse won. Now, when you use a TrainTest Split to build a model, what it will typically do is use the first 80% of the data. Now, bear in mind we're just looking at a very small data set here, but it illustrates the underlying principles of TrainTest Split and k-fold cross-validation. But with this example, it would use 80% of the data to train the model, and I've just highlighted 8 rows there. So it will use those rows to train the model. Then when it's trained the model, it will test it on 20% of the data. So in my case here, the last 2 rows. Now that's a TrainTest Split. The drawback of TrainTest Split is that you're only getting to train on 80% of the data and you're only training on 20%. Now you might say, okay, well maybe we get more results if we increase the test portion to 30%. But the drawback of that is you're reducing the modeling section of data to 70%. So you may get more results from the test portion, but you may get less accuracy because you're using less data to model or train your model on. So there's a playoff between the two. Now an alternative is to use k-fold cross-validation. Now the way that works is it would use the first 80% to train the model, and then it will test it on the last 20%. But then what it will do is it will sort of kind of rotate round and it will use a different 80% to train the model, which I've highlighted here, and then it will test it on a different 20%. That's the first 2 rows. Having done that, it will then go on to another fold where it will train the model on the first 2 rows plus the last 6 rows. So it will train the model on the first 2 rows and the last 6 rows, and then it will test it on these 2 rows here, rows 4 and 5. When it's done that, it will go on to another fold and it will train the model on the first 4 rows plus the last 4 rows. And then it will test the model on those 2 rows there. So hopefully you can see that it's using, in my case here, 5-fold cross-validation, and it's training on a different fold each time and testing on a different fold. So what it's able to do is squeeze more information and more results out of the same set of data, the same amount of data. So it would then take all those results and you can either average them or just pool them all together and report them as a final set of results. Now the final option when you're building a model in MySportsAI is to use a supplied test file. In that case, what would happen here is it would train the model on all the data. Oops, well you get the idea, I've just wrote too much there, but it would train the model on all the data, and then you'll be prompted to supply another file, and it will test then the model it's created on this data on the supplied test file that you've actually clicked on when it prompts you for a file. So those are the 3 options. You've got the TrainTest Split, k-fold cross-validation, and you can set k to whatever value you want, and you've got the supplied test file. One final point is that I'm showing it splitting the data here on rows. So for example, with the TrainTest Split, it's splitting it on the first 80%. What it actually will do is it'll split the data on races, not rows. So it will split the data into 80% of the races that are occurring in the data and 20% of the races. It will do that by using the race ID column. We want it to do that because if we just split it on 80% of the data, we might end up with one race being cut off across the boundary or cut off across midpoint of runners, in which case you may even have one race with no winners in it because it fell across the midpoint of the race. So it splits the data on races, which makes more sense. Okay, hopefully that helps clear up the difference between TrainTest Split, K4 cross validation and supply test file. Thanks.